This is a big deal. It's a big deal. So one of the things that fascinates me about this, so there's a tool that we use with leaders, some of you are familiar with, called the Skills and Knowledge Inventory. And this particular inventory is a way to assess your current level of leadership competence, and also some of the skills and knowledge that are skills and the knowledge that's feeding into those competencies. And what's fascinating is you look at the leadership competencies and you think about delegation as a fundamental skill, that delegation is kind of a block and tackle, very, in some ways, kind of a simple thing to talk about. I mean, the ways to actually get it done, I think, get a little bit more complex, which we're going to talk about. But it's fascinating to look at. I wouldn't consider delegation as an executive competence, but it is a skill that is directly related to some. All right, so let me give you a couple of examples. One of the leadership competencies that we often reference, it's actually a part of the skills knowledge inventory, is this: engage and inspire others. As leaders, we have this responsibility for engaging and inspire others. And the definition of that is I empower and motivate my team. Another one that's directly related, you can hang delegation on, is execution. And the definition of that is I am known for getting things done. Now I think there's other things you could hang delegation on, but I want to suggest to you that it is impossible to do either of those things without a healthy dose of delegation. So what I want to ask you about is this. And by the way, do not dismiss yourself or disqualify yourself if you don't have a team right now. I hope that you won't, that you'll either look at it from the perspective of maybe what does it mean for someone to delegate to you, or the delegation, I think, is something that actually does occur in our families and in different ways, even if we don't have direct leadership authority right now. If we could be working with volunteers, all kinds of things that might be relevant to this conversation. So here's my question. The wild question I want to throw out to you to start is, if you effectively delegated decision-making authority to your team members, what would be different for you and for them? If you effectively delegated decision-making authority to your team members, what would be different for you and for them? And when I say that, I'm telling you, I really am in the season where both of my sons are now off of college, and the jobs that I had delegated to them, they are no longer doing. So I'm kind of on this flip side of that, which is kind of interesting. And garbage is one of the big ones. The dishes is the other one. That's a big one because they handled all that, which sometimes was a brotherly fight, I will tell you, certain nights. But the one that I never effectively delegated was scooping the dog poop. So I got to be honest with you. My wife's always like, it's their job. It's on the list. Like, why are you doing it for them? And to be honest, because it was just easier for me to do it myself. Like, I'm going out to mow the lawn. I have a thing. I like mowing my lawn. It's a very concrete sort of deliverable in my house. And I'm just like, I could spend the next 20 minutes like going in, waking them up on a Saturday or whatever else and get it, or I could just do it. So I ineffectively delegated that job that was theirs. But this is this question: if we effectively, and I use that word's important, effectively delegated decision-making authority to our team members, what would be different for us and for them? Now I'm going to give you a couple of definitions. Let's talk about what delegation is. One of the definitions is this: delegation is the shifting of authority and responsibility for particular functions, tasks, or decisions from one person, usually a leader or manager, to another. So it includes both responsibility and action. You got that? So it's that effectively doing that. Here's another definition. I think it's really, really simple. It's the act of empowering another person to act on your behalf. The act of empowering another person to act on their behalf. Now, what's interesting is like, I put this in parens around that definition, that they now have the authority to do what I do, to make decisions I would normally make, and to take action on my behalf. In essence, without the identity of being me, they now act out in the role that was mine to have. So that's what's kind of interesting about this, is they're not me, but they're actually making decisions on my behalf. And I think that's interesting. Some of you might say like, well, it's really like not even on your behalf. They just get to make decisions. Well, yes and no. Because when we get delegate authority, actually, they are now making decisions that you would have made before. And so there's a whole lot, and some of you are like, so there's a whole lot going on in that pass off and passing that off. Here's a couple of things on the traditional story of delegation. I like these, the way we normally think about them. The leader micromanages people, right? So we get blamed for micromanaging. And then the other possibility is that the team is a bunch of slackers. It's like, these are kind of these traditional stories. I think it's funny too, when you think about like group exercises, when I was dealing with college students. And so often, you think about your experience in group exercises in school. And a lot of times it was like, were you the person who kind of did everything, or the person, who was the slacker? There's so much more going on than just the person who was conscientious and the slackers. I dealt with so many students who did it all, who were sitting in my office going, you know what, I just can do it better than other people. I'm not kidding you. I heard that dozens of times. So I just end up doing it myself and no one else is contributing. And I'm like, yeah, so sometimes, is there any chance that you're making it difficult for other people to contribute? So there's a lot of interesting dynamics in that. That's kind of the traditional take on this. But let's go into, what does this mean from a whole and intentional perspective? What is the story of delegation? So here's a thought. The whole story of delegating well is that it includes so many variables: a skilled and emotionally mature leader and team, layers of trust, clear and prioritized tasks, individual initiative, conscientiousness, awareness of competencies and gaps, and a lot more than that. But that's just a start. Like, quite literally, the process of delegating well, of empowering people to act on your behalf, includes a lot of different variables. And it's interesting too. Just one shout out I want to give, that many of you who know us know this, that we are embedded in the research. I mean, everything that WiLD does in the WiLD toolkit is embedded in this idea that much of development is occurring through crucible experiences. Really difficult moments and experiences that are oftentimes happening on the job. So some of you have heard me say before that to the extent that leaders or individuals in your organization are struggling, there's one thing you do know, that the developmental laboratory is in place. The laboratory for learning is in place. So think about it this way. If you fail to delegate those responsibilities, you're failing to offer up that developmental classroom to people in your organization. I mean, there is the developmental component that's not about just getting the job done. And here's the deal, like we work with so many CEOs who, especially if you feel this so deeply in like small to mid-cap organizations in terms of revenue, is that here's the deal. Unless we figure it out, our organizations and the impact of them cannot expand without this occurring well. Like, it has to occur in order for us to do this. If we overfunction, we not only deny the developmental opportunity, but we can't scale. We can't scale our lives, and we can't scale the work that we do. So I want to just I want to talk just for a second about the characteristics of the delegator. I just love words. Some of you know I love words like delegates. I was thinking about someone who goes to a conference on our behalf. It's like, but I want to talk about the delegator and the delegate, the person being delegated to. But before I do that, there is something that I know eats at many of you, and it's this. You aren't in a season where you have a team of people that you actually feel like you can trust. Or you might be one of those people who's on a team of people, right, where you're not sure that happens. That doesn't make you abnormal. That makes you very, very normal. And when I say that you can't trust, I'm not saying that we don't have issues of our own trustworthiness as well. But this question of many of us are working in organizations where we have groups of people where the concept of giving away power and decision-making authority and even tasks is way more complex than just our micromanaging. There's a bigger issue. And I would suggest to you that one of the things would be my hope for each of you. We talk about something called developmental readiness, that the possibility of beginning to look for people as you bring them into your organization from the outside who are, or from another team, who are developmentally ready to stretch, ready to grow, ready to adapt. And if they're not, then maybe they're not ready to work with you. But I also would say this, what we have seen is that in many cases, existing team members have not been invited into the possibility they could be developmentally ready. So you don't just have ineffective people and effective people, but an investment over the long term in your people would be, to invite them into the possibility that they could change. And in the past, they've never thought about that. They've never been invited in. And so that's, some of you know, that's the fundamental structure of the work that we do, is providing a system for that invitation. So in terms of both the external people you might hire and the internal people you have, is sort of looking for and inviting to that concept of developmental readiness is so necessary, because something like delegation is connected into so many other things. So just a couple of things, and then I'm going to give you some practical steps for where would you begin, Rob? So in terms of the delegator, a couple of things to think about. The issue of trust in the team you have. And by the way, the team could be family or otherwise, right? So that's something that the delegator has to be thinking about, is do I have trust and confidence in the team I have? The second thing is the willingness to let go of control of the outcomes. The willingness to let go of control of the outcomes. I mean, quite literally, the one whose birthday is tomorrow, Megan and I, we laugh about this because Megan knows me well enough to know, and we've had this long standing, we've worked in 2 different organizations together. So we kind of know the tricks of the trade in terms of us delegating to one another. And so letting go of outcomes is something that's it's related to that trust question. And encourage to let someone else do it their way. Even little things, like one of the things that Megan and I are very, very convicted is graphics. I mean, it's just like so Megan has strong opinions about graphics. Rob has strong opinions about graphics. And so working together requires us to figure out, what am I going to hold on to? What am I going to let go of? You know, where is that line? And thinking about that. Another characteristic of the delegator is understanding the motivations of your team members to perform and to learn, which is actually the conversation in real-time coaching right after this, is like understanding what motivates people is a key part of delegation. And then finally this, well, let me hold on to that last one. Okay, because I think it's shared between the delegator and the delegate. Let's talk about the delegate for a moment. Because it's not just about managers, right? Trying to delegate. What about the person being delegated to? The number one thing I have in here, conscientiousness and performance. Like being a conscientious contributor and someone who's performing at the best level possible for you. I would probably add something to that also that's key for our WiLD team, is over communicating as opposed to under communicating, which reduces trust. So conscientiousness, performance, and over communicating, those are things that help people understand how to delegate. Next thing is an awareness of the leader you work for and their way of working and leading. We can say all day long that we have generalizations of what leaders are about and all that stuff, but the reality is, I'm looking at all your faces. Every one of you has different things that motivate you, different things that are difficult for you to sacrifice. And so an understanding of the leaders that we work for it's a necessary part. A willingness to not only do what you are motivated to do, this is my next one, but also what must be done. Every one of us has got to be thinking about, sure, we'd love to do all the things we love all day long, but there's other things that must be done. And then finally is this. This is something that I think the delegates and the delegators both share, is bringing a desire to become increasingly emotionally mature. And some of you know that the way that we describe that is an aspiration to be increasingly differentiated as a person. Clear about who you are with an equal emphasis on who other people are. Because the process of delegation includes this concept of emotional maturity is necessary to do this well, especially as your organizations grow and the impact grows. So the question is this: where are you going to begin? So Rob, what would you say? So the first thing is this. I mentioned this before. Let's start with the assumption that you have people who are reasonably mature, who are developmentally ready. If you don't, pay attention to that. Maybe part of the delegation challenge is that you don't have the people have not been invited into their own readiness, or maybe you need some different people in certain cases. That'd be the first thing. I think, because it's you don't start there. You know what I'm talking about. You just start giving away things and then all of a sudden it goes south. So that's okay. The second thing is this: evaluating what you have on your plate and what you need to delegate. And I'll tell you that one of the best ways to get a sense of that is a job description. It's unbelievable the number of of leaders that we deal with who do not have a job description. And I think it's difficult to know what to give away until you know the job you're supposed to be doing. So even a simple job description, I mean, I have a 5-point job description that Daniel did a ton of work on with me to say, like, this is what you should be doing. This is what you should not be doing. And it was incredible in terms of me just emotionally letting go of certain things I felt like I was supposed to do, because so often we feel that. So a job description can be a huge thing. Also, we have this process, the skills and knowledge inventory I mentioned to you, is like understanding where your strengths are, assessing that, and understanding where your blind spots are, or things you don't do so well. Those are things you either have to develop or you got to delegate to get it done. Like, you've got to figure that out. The third thing, I think this is a big one, gets a little bit deeper. Identify what you struggle to give away that is important for you to give away. And maybe why. Because delegation requires sacrifices. What is it that you're holding on to for what purpose? And what are if you aren't willing to go there and figure it out, then that's maybe the first problem. We got to have that willingness to say, like, what is it's difficult for me to give away? Number 4, hand off work that is as specific as possible, and that these other people will have autonomy to do. Hand off work that is specific as possible and that they have the autonomy to do. Now, I would say that this is the one I struggle with the most. I got to be honest with you. And I have people around me who are incredible with initiative and sort of figuring that out for themselves. But I tend to, my strength is in identifying the larger target goal. And then, so if I have a team around me that knows how to achieve those things and get it done, then not only do I have to give that level of specificity away. And that's, for some of you, that's the truth. For some of you, the reality might be like specificity gets in your way because that leads into you wanting to do it your way. And then here's the last thing, number 5, identify moments for feedback loops, and to connect in where you're needed. So if you have a regular cadence of where you're checking in with the people that you're delegating to, you still need to be in the loops. Not in a control sort of perspective, but to bring your unique skills and your leadership and maybe your experience of things you've seen that maybe team members haven't seen. And so having that regular cadence, maybe those are your quarterly or monthly or weekly kinds of check-ins with that team that you delegate to, that still is important, as long as you don't try to take back control of it. So I hope some of that's helpful as we jump out of these conversations. Let's go talk and increase our capacity.